Welcome to episode 7 of Book Nerd Paradise, where we get to know an author as they tell us one of their favorite quotes, read from their work, pose a trivia question, and give away a book or two. Hi, I'm LRW Lee, author of the Andy Smithson epic fantasy adventure series. Be sure to download the free ebook of Book One from Amazon. In honor of the launch of Book 4 in the Andy Smithson series, Resurrection of the Phoenix's Grace, I've decided to have some fun and interview myself. So, a little background. LRW Lee credits her introduction to C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia as the beginning of her love of fantasy. She also enjoyed the complex world of Middle-earth brought to life by J.R.R. Tolkien. The multiple dimensions of these worlds mixed with a deeper layer of meaning captivated her and made her desire to invent worlds others could get lost in, but also take meaning away from. More recently, LRW has found inspiration from J.K. Rowling and her Harry Potter series, as well as Brandon Mull and his best-selling Fablehaven, Beyonders, and Five Kingdoms series. LRW writes to share with her readers principles that can transform their lives, overcoming frustration, impatience, fear, and more. She also shows why responsibility, diligence, and dignity are the keys to true success in life. LRW Lee lives in scenic Austin, Texas with her husband. Her daughter is a senior studying electrical engineering at UT Austin, and her son serves in the Air Force. Welcome, LRW. I'm excited to be here today. Thanks so much for having me. Because you'll be giving our listeners a sneak peek of your book that launched this morning, would you give us a brief synopsis of Resurrection of the Phoenix's Grace? Sure. So, after a frustrating and at times terrifying year, Andy returns to Amaldi and he joins Hans in a quest to locate the only surviving heir to the throne of Cromlech, which is his homeland. In the process, Andy and company discover that the Giant's Ring, the center of Cromlech's healing powers, has been destroyed by Abaddon's evil sorcerer. The situation grows dire when Andy finds that the Phoenix, who rose from that land millennia before, has returned to be reborn, and the evil mage has trapped her inside the decimated ring. Without the freedom to collect materials she needs in terms of wood and such to build a fire, she's going to die. And so Andy knows failure is not an option because he needs a feather from this phoenix as the next ingredient for the curse. Wow, that sure sounds like a riveting tale that's bound to keep readers turning pages. LRW, what will you be giving away? I'm going to give away a set of the complete Andy Smithson series so far. So that's this prequel, paperback of Blast of the Dragon's Fury, Book 1, paperback of Venom of the Serpent's Cunning, Book 2, paperback of Disgrace of the Unicorn's Honor, Book 3, and the one that just released today, Resurrection of the Phoenix's Grace. That's awesome. That's the entire series so far. And there's 3 more books coming. To enter to win, just leave a short comment about the episode on YouTube. But remember, liking the episode isn't going to enter you in the giveaway, so make sure you leave a short comment. You've selected one of your favorite quotes to share with our listeners. What is it and why is it a favorite? Yeah, my quote is one from the 6th President of the United States, John Quincy Adams. And it's, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And the reason I like that quote is because, as you mentioned in your introduction, my passion for writing is to share with my readers principles that, from personal experience, I've found can transform your life. So, for instance, like overcoming frustration, impatience, fear, and a whole lot more. To give an example, most people are familiar with the word frustration, but most of us don't have narratives to help when we get frustrated. Well, what I found is frustration is really nothing more than your story that things should be different than they are. And, you know, when things get that way, We experience varying degrees of frustration. Sometimes there's a small child who really can't cope and has a meltdown, but other times, I mean, even myself, you know, upon occasion when you can't get something to work, or things just don't seem to be going your way, you get frustrated. And what I've found is when you unpack what you're frustrated by, most times you find that it was your choices that produced the situation, and basically you discover that things should be exactly as they are. And that's just one example, but it demonstrates why I love that quote. It captures my desire to lead readers to new possibilities to enjoy more peaceful and happy lives. LRW, what portion of Resurrection of the Phoenix's Grace will you be reading for us today? Andy and company have ventured into the land of Cromlech, which is Hans's homeland, in search of, among other things, the next ingredient to break the curse. So there they come upon the Giant's Ring, which is the center of Cromlech's healing powers, and find that it's been broken. While investigating, they meet Fidus, a keeper of the ring, and a wizard. He's a good wizard. But trouble is about to visit them. Andy had just popped the last bite of bread into his mouth when the ground began to rumble. "What's happening?" Hannah cried, clutching her seat. Jagged white streams of light shot toward 5 of the lintels. "Look!" Alden pointed to a dark figure standing near one of the giant stone columns, arms extended. "The Dark Wizard!" Fidus exclaimed. Andy bounded toward the clear wall for a better look. "We've got to stop him before he destroys the ring." The sky grew dark as the company bolted from the security of their hideaway. A clap of thunder cracked, and wind began to swirl, hurling dead grass and stray objects at them. The heaving ground made Andy feel like he was in a bounce house. Andy drew an arm up to shield his eyes. The Phoenix was no longer constructing her masterpiece. Only her head, with its long, slender beak, was visible above the edge of her fortress. A bolt of lightning streaked across the sky, followed immediately by a pair of thunderclaps directly above. The grating sounds of shifting lintels accompanied 2 more streaks of lightning. Energy lit up the dim sky, and a peal of thunder barked. Sergeant Fulk charged headlong toward the Dark Wizard with outstretched sword. The rest of the company stumbled after him as the ground continued seizing. 2 jagged streams of light flew over Andy's head, distracting him. He looked back through squinted eyes and saw Fidus had stopped running and now directed energy toward the dark figure. Fidus's bolt struck the wizard, and it let loose a shrill, ear-piercing squeal. Everyone stopped and covered their ears. The villain returned a volley, and the company found themselves caught in the crossfire. "Crawl!" Captain Baldric shouted, heading toward a stone sentry. Another thunder peal roared overhead, and lightning danced across the sky as the group retreated toward safety. Yara sprang up, hoisted her skirt, and ran. She barely avoided zaps from 2 streaks of white light before finally plunging behind a stone column. The rest of the company piled into her in their haste. A duet of lightning and thunder protested the company's safe retreat. Fidus and the Dark Wizard locked in combat and lit up the ring as if it were midday. Fidus's face strained with the effort. Throwing caution to the wind, he bolted from safety. "Andy!" Captain Baldric and Sergeant Tarrant cried, grabbing for him but missing. As he dashed into the fray, Andy overheard the captain bellow, "Alden!" The arc of energy pitched violently, and Fidus shouted, "No!" Methuselah led him along a zigzag path that narrowly escaped the wizard's game of jump rope. Maniacal laughter sounded from behind them, and the 4 whirled around to see the Dark Wizard dusting off his sleeves as he stood. A white-robed form lay unmoving halfway between. Evil raised its arms once more, and a bolt of jagged white light shot from each of his fingers, clawing at the lintels. Andy drew Methuselah and dashed toward the adversary. The Dark Wizard diverted a bolt at Andy. He instinctively brought Methuselah's blade up and directed the pulse toward the ground, infuriating the mage. It loosened its grasp from 3 of the listing lintels and redirected the energy no more than a foot over Andy's head, causing him to duck. Shrieks and howls erupted behind him, and he pivoted. His friends lay scattered like toys after an angry child's tantrum. Alden convulsed as a beam assaulted his chest. Hannah shook violently and yelped as another ray bit at her leg like a frenzied dog. Yara writhed, howling as a bolt zapped her shoulder. "Stop!" Andy demanded as he rushed back for his friends. Reaching Alden's side, he intercepted the wizard's beam, and Alden's body ceased its jerky movements. He grabbed one of Alden's feet as the girls continued to yelp and howl. Fumbling to keep his blade upright, he dragged Alden 2 yards to where Hannah thrashed. Once out of the bite of the beams, they both lay quietly. Andy wiped away beads of sweat from his lip, trying to convince himself they were from exertion and not fear. How do I get Yara? He knew the instant he left the pair to retrieve her, his friends would again feel the wrath of the Dark Wizard's energy, but there seemed to be no other solution. Scratch, scrape. The foreboding sounds coaxed Andy's gaze upward in time to see 3 crossbeams begin to teeter. They begged for intercession, but Andy refused. He raced to where the princess flopped about and found her staring blankly with her mouth stretched in a silent scream. Andy deflected a bolt, stilling her form, and the features he found so captivating relaxed. For a moment, he stopped and appreciated. He grabbed an arm and dragged her to where the others were again shaking like marionettes in the hands of a cruel puppeteer. Scratch, scrape, silence. Andy glanced over to see 2 of the lintels dive from their pedestals, as if announcing their assessment that his priorities were skewed. The ground shook as the columns collapsed, and the Dark Wizard belted out another chilling laugh. On its own, each bolt of energy did not require significant effort to deflect, but concentrated, the 3 cords pressed hard on Methuselah and made Andy's arm shake. Adding his other hand, he steadied his blade, then surveyed his friends. No one moved. Scrape, scrape. The wizard had directed his energy toward enticing 3 more lintels to leave. Andy? Dad's voice in his head drew out the syllables. Ping-ponging his head between his friends and the mage, Andy nodded in determination, then took off running toward the agitator. Within seconds, the cords that had impaled his friends morphed into a rope that whipped about, a serpent readying a strike. As Andy neared Fidus's still form, the snake struck, launching the keeper 10 feet into the air. No! The Dark Wizard greeted Andy's protest with more laughter as Fidus's body thudded to the ground. The serpent of energy picked up its toy again and repeated the gesture. Andy gritted his teeth as he charged past. Seemingly disappointed that Andy refused to watch him play, the conjurer whipped the energy snake around and bit Andy's leg. Youch! And a wail escaped, and Andy took several run hops before working through the pain. He was 10 yards from his objective, however, when a black cat man bolted from behind the wizard. Ooh, just when it's getting good. So I guess you'll just have to get the book and see how it all ends, huh? So last week, AR posed a trivia question for us. If you would, remind us what it was and tell us what the answer is.
Well, the question was, in the novel, our main character is half human and half what? And the answer is, she is half dragon.
LRW, you have a trivia question for our listeners. What is it? Yes, I do. And I have to confess, I'm a Potterhead, a Rigger, and an Arnian. So my trivia question had to be from one of those 3 works. My trivia question is from Harry Potter then. And it is, what animal is Cho Chang's Patronus? LRW will reveal the answer to this trivia challenge on our next episode, so be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss out. LRW, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners? I believe everyone wants to live a happy and enjoyable life, yet many times we find ourselves frustrated and afraid or impatient and more, and our happiness suffers. Sprinkled throughout the Andy Smithson series are demonstrations of how to more effectively cope with life when you find yourself unhappy. I've had reviewers of all ages rave about how these principles have been woven throughout the books in a non-preachy way that everybody can enjoy and learn from. I invite you to give the Andy Smithson series a try. You can find out more about the series at my website, which is at LRWLee.com. Thanks so much for those words. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know LRW Lee just a little bit. I'm LRW Lee, author of the Andy Smithson Epic Fantasy Adventure Series. The eBook, Book One in the Andy Smithson series, Blast of the Dragon's Fury, is available free, so be sure to follow the link below to download your copy. And please leave a review once you've read it. Our guest for the next episode will be fantasy author Stephen Merlino, so be sure to tune in for that. Thanks Thanks so much for watching.